Welcome to the video. Today, we'll be covering hazardous materials, focusing on key questions and multiple choice answers to help you prepare for your CDL Hazmat endorsement. In this video, you'll find each question will help you understand the concepts better. To get the most out of this session, make sure you have your notepad, a pen, and your CDL study guide handy to follow along and take notes. By the end of this video, you'll be better equipped to tackle the hazmat section of your CDL test. Let's get started. When carrying explosives and have found braces damages, do not allow to smoke or make fire near the vehicle. If you must leave a placarded vehicle on the public roadway, it must be watched by a qualified person who completed course of requirement. When transporting Division 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3 explosives, you must have a written route plan and follow that plan. Which of these placards must be displayed whenever any amount of the material is in transportation? Oxygen. A safe haven is an approved place for parking unattended vehicles loaded with explosives. A flammable liquid can be transferred from one tanker to another on a public roadway if it is an emergency situation. Placards are 10 3/4 inches square on point in a blank shape. Diamond. A vehicle placarded for hazardous material must have placards on blank sides. 4. When loading or unloading any explosives, never use hooks or other metal tools. When transporting Division 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3 explosives, you must have a written route plan and follow that plan. If you have a hazardous material fire in the road, you should not attempt to control the fire. An X in the HM column of a shipping paper entry means the entry is for hazardous material. Which of the following must drivers have in their possession while transporting Class 1.1 or 1.2 explosives? The written route plan. A vehicle contains 500 pounds each of explosives 1.1 and 1.2. You must use explosives 1.1 placards. To find out if a shipment includes a hazardous material, you should look at the shipment paper. You are behind a wheel of a truck carrying a hazardous material shipment. The shipping papers must be on the pouch on the driver's door or in clear view within your reach. The intent of the Hazardous Material Regulation has 3 parts. 1. To ensure safe drivers and equipment. 2. To contain the materials. And 3. To communicate the risks. If you are in an accident involving hazardous materials, you should keep all people away and upwind of the accident. Who is responsible for finding out what permits or special routes you will need to haul hazardous materials? The driver. You have a vehicle without racks to hold cylinders of compressed gas. You may load such cylinders only as they are. Loaded upright or braced laying down flat. With most hazardous materials, you may park within 5 feet of the road briefly if your work requires it. The materials, which are the exception and do not allow parking this close to the roadside, are explosives 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3. A properly prepared uniform hazardous waste manifest. Must be signed and carried by anyone transporting a hazardous waste. A dated certificate of radioactive materials training must be carried by the driver. If you need to placard a vehicle for hazardous materials, at least how many placards you will need. 4. The power unit of a placarded vehicle must have a fire extinguisher with a UL rating of blank BC or more. 10. You find an overheated tire during en route inspection. If you are hauling hazardous materials, you must remove the tire and place it a safe distance from the vehicle. Class 1.1 explosives must not be transported in a combination vehicle if it includes a placarded cargo tank. The basic description of a hazardous material includes the hazard class, the identification number, and the proper shipping name. Which one must appear first in the shipping paper? The proper shipping name. A railroad crossing is ahead of you and you are hauling hazardous material. When you stop for the crossing, you can stop as far away as blank feet from the nearest rail. 50. Who is responsible for safely transporting a hazardous material shipment without delay and keeping the shipping papers in the right place? The driver. When hauling packages of explosives, you must never use hooks or other metal tools. If the word forbidden appears in the hazard class column of an entry in the hazardous material table, a common carrier must never transport the material. Your vehicle contains explosives, oxidizer, or flammables. No one may smoke within blank feet of the vehicle. (25) When transporting chlorine in a cargo tank, you must have both A and B. You have loaded a hazardous material into a cargo tank. What must you do before you move the vehicle? Close all manholes and valves and be sure they are free of leaks. You have hazardous material leaking from a container but not spilling from your vehicle. Drive to the closest area where you can get help. And call emergency personnel if they are needed. You need to warn other motorists of a stopped vehicle, which has a tank used for flammable liquid or gases you may use. Reflective triangles. If there is a RQ before or after the item description on the shipping paper, it means the carrier must report a spill of the material. You are carrying placarded Class 7 radioactive material. Must you stop before railroad crossing? Yes. Who is responsible for checking that the shipper correctly named, labeled, and marked a hazardous materials shipment? Carrier. The total transport index of all radioactive materials packages in a single vehicle must not exceed 50. When fueling a placard vehicle, someone must always be at the nozzle controlling the fuel flow. When shippers package hazardous materials, they must certify that this was done according to regulations. The only exceptions is when the shipper is a private carrier carrying their own product. You are hauling hazardous materials and you find that one of your tires is leaking. You must stop at the nearest safe place and fix it. You should stop before crossing a railroad grade if your vehicle is carrying blank of chlorine. Any amount. Carriers must give each driver who transports Class 1.1 or Class 1.2 explosives a copy of FMCSR Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, Part 397. You are going to be hauling hazardous materials over a route you do not know well. When should you check the route and the permits needed for the trip? Before starting the trip. The hazard class of a 2-liter bottle of material is flammable liquid. If the description also says poison inhalation hazard, you should placard the vehicle both with the poison and hazard class placards. If hazardous material is spilling from your vehicle, do not move your vehicle. Any more than safety requires. You are transporting hazardous materials. When you are not behind the wheel, the shipping papers must be on the driver's seat or in the driver's door pouch. To stop for the railroad tracks, you should stop blank feet before the nearest track. 15 to 50. When hauling hazardous materials, you must stop your vehicle and check any dual tires at least once every blank, whichever is less. (2 hours or 100 miles. The transport index of a radioactive material tells the degree of control needed during transportation. You may not park a vehicle carrying hazardous materials within blank feet of an open fire. 300. A vehicle carrying explosives has crashed with another vehicle. You should not pull them apart until the explosives have been placed at least 200 feet away from the vehicle and occupied buildings. Only one of these shipping papers' description for a hazardous material is in the right order. Which one is it? Hydrogen bromide, non-flammable gas, UN 1048. If an X or RQ is in the HM column of a shipper paper entry, the shipment is regulated by the Hazardous Materials Regulations. There are 3 lists that drivers, shippers, and carriers use to find out if a material is a regulated product. One of these is the List of hazardous substances in reportable quantities. The intent of the Hazardous Materials Regulation has three parts. 1. To ensure safety of drivers and equipment. 2. To communicate the risk. And 3. To contain the materials. Who is responsible for packaging, labeling, and preparing the hazardous material shipping papers for a common carrier? Shipper. A vehicle placarded for hazardous materials must have placards on blank sides. 4. A hazard class name or ID number may not be used to describe. Non-hazardous materials. Which signals may be used to warn of a stopped vehicle which contains explosives? Reflective triangles. Whenever your vehicle is placarded, do not drive near open fire unless you can safely pass the fire without stopping. A driver who transports route-controlled radioactive material must have had special training by the carrier within the last blank years. Two. Animal and human foodstuffs should not be loaded in the same vehicle with poison class 6. Into which class of hazmat do fireworks fall? Explosives. Battery fluid would fall into what category? Corrosives. Which of these hazmat falls into the spontaneously combustible category? White phosphorus. In government documents, hazardous material is abbreviated to HM. If there is an RQ before or after the item description on the shipping paper, it means the carrier must report any spill of this material. Which of the following choices is in hazard class you are not allowed to smoke around? All of the above. You do not have a hazardous material endorsement on your commercial license. When can you legally haul hazardous material? Only when the vehicle does not require placards. Carriers must give each driver who transport Class A or B explosives. A copy of FMCSR Part 397. The hazardous materials identification number is important because all of the above. In the event of an accident involving hazardous materials, you should first send someone for help and warn others of the danger. When hauling explosives 1.1 and 1.3, which placard do you use? Explosives 1.1. Thank you for watching.